there's an exact moment where I realized that I had to lose the weight. I've told this story quite a few times, but my wife took my daughter to like a garden center, like a garden store, and there was a statue of a fat, bald Buddha, like the laughing old.
We have Mike Denman, Mike Denman Fitness on Instagram, the Fit Dad. For those of you who don't know, Mike, thanks for joining the podcast. Mike is the recipient of the largest hair transplant ever performed in the UK. Now, I have to specify the UK because people will start saying, wait a minute, but this is a bigger hair transplant. Zarev does bigger ones. In the UK, he's had the biggest one, uncontested. I was the first one to actually tell Dr. Ted Milner, because when he told me the numbers, I was like, you know what? I don't think there's ever been anyone who's done a surgery that big. And he was like, really? And I was like, I'll go back and look. But in the UK that I can think of, nobody's ever done that much in one session. And that's basically almost 8,000 grafts, right? It was like 7,800
Yeah, like
or something like that.
7,800. Yeah,
So, I mean, round up, it's like basically 8,000 grafts that
yeah,
you
and no
received
one's come
in.
out and said that you're wrong. So
No,
I guess
no, I
I
don't.
guess you must be all right.
Yeah, I think I'm right. Yeah. So, Mike, tell me a little bit about your journey. You're 44 years old,
45 now.
45 now. I'm
Yeah.
turning 40 in 3 weeks, so I'm right there with you, buddy. Uh, so you're similar to me. You're an older dad. I have a 3-year-old
Yeah.
turning 3 next month, and you have 3 children, right?
Two.
Or
So I've got
two.
one 6-year-old and one 18 months.
So 6-year-old was when you were 39, and
Yeah.
18-month was when you were in your 40s, which I think I'm going to follow a similar trajectory. Tell me a little bit about your journey. What made you want to do something about your hair loss? You've had an incredible transformation, both hair wise and physically. But what made you? What was the thing that made you say, what's let me think about this hair transplant. Maybe there's something to it.
I think it was the kind of physical transformation. Like I lost a pretty decent amount of weight. I lost about 50 kilos in the space of 4 years. So I started when I was about 41, losing the weight. And it was that led to thinking about the hair transplant. Honestly, it had never crossed my mind before I, pretty much finished losing all the weight. And yeah, I hadn't even thought about it. And part of the reason that I lost all the weight was what you were talking about is the kind of older dad thing. And I didn't want to feel like an older dad. There's obviously like a big kind of mindset change that goes with losing that amount of weight. You pretty much have to change your whole identity to get that amount of weight off. It's not about small changes. You've got to make big changes mentally and in terms of your habits and things like that. I started, it's a kind of roundabout way of telling this story, but I ended up starting a TRT from a company called Manual because by this point, I'd
Ah,
already
yeah.
lost all the weight and I'd, given up drinking completely. I was strength training um, and still not quite feeling like 100%, like in terms of energy and things like that. So ended up having a test, two tests actually, um, and still had really low testosterone. And
Mm.
then Manual, who are the company that I initially started the TRT with, also sell hair loss medication. Um,
Mm.
so they essentially give you testosterone, which makes your hair fall out, and then sell you medicine to grow it back. I think this is
The
basically
perfect the
their
perfect
business
business
model.
plan, huh?
Yeah.
They'll keep you forever.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, and it's just a sort of finasteride and topical minoxidil, and it's relatively cheap to kind of start off on that. And I thought I'll give it a go. And I was firmly kind of Norwood 6 at that point. And in terms of regrowing your hair, it did virtually nothing. Like obviously it would have stopped or slowed down any further loss. But by that point, and I got involved in kind of taking the medication and thinking, oh, maybe it would be nice to have hair back. Maybe that'd kind of finish off the transformation kind of thing. And so when I realized that the medication wasn't going to do that, then I started looking into the possibility of getting a hair transplant.
So here you're 21 years old, really young
Yeah.
kid. You had a temporal recession. I would probably say you were like Norwood 2, bordering 3 right here.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, had you noticed, like, did anybody say, like,
No,
"Hey,
not at
Mike,
all.
you're uh, you're on your way to becoming a slaphead," like they say in the UK?
Yeah. No, it had honestly at that point at 21, it had not even sort of entered my thinking that looking back now, and I only really look
Mm,
back at those photos when I'd done a consultation or I was just about to do a consultation for hair loss for a hair
mm.
transplant. And looking back on them at that point, I thought, yeah, actually, like it was definitely going at that point. But yeah, at the time, I hadn't even noticed. Yeah, I can't really even tell you why that was. Obviously, by that photo on the screen there at age 35, it was fairly hard
There
to to not
y
realize at that point because it would mostly
Yeah,
gone
there
at the
was
front.
already going. This is after medication for 9 months. So, as you can
Yeah,
see, like, you did get some benefit, right? Like,
yeah, yeah. It didn't
you
do
had
nothing.
some. Yeah, it
Maybe a
did
little bit
some. It
around the crown, a little
Yeah,
bit,
it gave you a
yeah, a
little
little
bit
bit
in the
around those
middle.
humps. Yeah,
So it's not like it's completely useless for someone who's a Norwood 6. Yeah,
yeah.
it's unlikely to get you to where exactly where you want to be. So, you're 21 years old. You weren't really realizing that you were losing your hair. You're 35. You're a chef.
But
You
yeah.
didn't want to do something about it then.
Didn't really it never really crossed my mind because I think because I kind of physically let myself go as well, that you just kind
Ah,
of you tell yourself that it kind of doesn't matter because if you started to think that the hair mattered, then maybe you'd start to think that the weight mattered and the fitness
mm.
mattered and all that kind of stuff. So because once you start confronting one thing that you're not happy with, then it kind of follows that you would then start confronting other things that you're not happy with appearance wise, right?
It's almost like when you have like a broken down car, like a beat up car, like what it you don't have motivation to take it for a car wash because you're like it's already beat up anyways. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like that kind of mentality of like I'll just let it get dirty and just filthy because it's already
Yeah, what's the point?
busted up
Yeah,
anyways. Yeah. Yeah. So I get that. What's kind of interesting about your story is that like it's usually the opposite, right? It's usually like people are fit and healthy and kind of like do their appearance and then they have kids and then they go by the wayside. They get like right, it's like dad bod, right? But you
yeah,
actually did the flip. Like you didn't have children at that point. You were like I don't know if you were married or not, but you didn't have kids and now that you have kids, you're in better shape than you were when you didn't. It was like you did the
yeah.
reverse.
I think it goes back to that kind of older dad thing, and a lot of the kind of fitness side of things I do for longevity as well as for just to look good or be lean or whatever. I've got an 18-month-year-old and I'm 45, so if you sort of kind of do some maths and work back from that, how old am I going to be when he graduates? How old am I going to be when he has kids? How old am I going to be when he gets married? All these things. And if you
Yeah.
actually stop and do that maths, I'm not sure whether I recommend it or not, but it's
I
quite
thought about
like a
that. Yeah.
sobering kind of it's a
I,
sobering thing. I think a lot of older dads kind of think like that. And actually there's an exact moment where I realized that I had to lose the weight. I've told this story quite a few times, but my wife took my daughter to like a garden center, like a garden store, and there was a statue of a fat, bald Buddha, like the laughing old Buddha, sort of sitting there. And
oh yeah, yeah.
my daughter runs up to this statue and cuddles it and shouts, "Daddy!"
Oh no.
And then my wife got a photo of it,
Gutted.
so I've got a photo of the exact moment, which I used for its inspiration for a long time. But
Yeah.
that was the exact moment, and I'm not exaggerating. Like from that day, like I started eating better. It was in September 2021, and like straight away, I was like, "No, enough's enough." And yeah, started eating better. I think I joined a gym mid-October, maybe end of October. Just never really stopped from that point until now.
That is a sobering thing. It's like, oof, I don't want to
And
be.
that's how she sees me. That was the worst part of it. That
Yeah.
I wasn't even there, and she saw this statue, and clearly she was 2 years old at the time, and that's her kind of vision of what her dad looks like.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, that's not good enough.
Can't do that. to get to this point of leanness would be very hard for me at right now. To get
Yeah.
from this, which is probably more like 30% body fat or maybe even more, it's
Yeah, I would say more, yeah.
absurdly difficult. Like for anybody who's ever tried to get really lean or do like a real serious cut, it's it's a whole different, you know what I mean? You're in a different league in terms of difficulty. It is so hard to, I mean, to get from that to that, like you said, I mean, you really have to just kind of change your whole life at that point. You're the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
you do things.
I think I generally there were kind of periods where I was very strict. So I think if I remember rightly, that photo was taken in the run up to a photo shoot that I had for the fitness business. So did 12 weeks of being like incredibly strict for that. For the majority of the time, the way I try and do it is to look at my calories across the week rather than day to day. Just that if I really fancy something, then I'll have it.
Mm.
So people ask me if it's really difficult, and it's not because I don't want it. So there's no willpower involved. I'm not doing something that I don't want to
Would you
do.
say, what would you recommend to somebody, like, let's say there's a guy out there, similar situation, maybe 30 kilos overweight. It's very easy to feel really motivated for a month and
Yeah,
then that just fizzles out, right? Like it just, like you're on fire and then the fire just dwindles down and just completely shuts off. And you're not going to see, almost just like hair, like you're not going to see a lot in a month, right? It's just
yeah,
consistent, month to month to month. By the time you realize, like 9 months, now you're starting to see change, because even though there was days, like you said, like you didn't want to go, maybe the workout sucked, but you still did it.
yeah.
Just that, seeing that consistency over time is what's necessary. But what would you recommend to someone in that position?
So the first thing that I always do with clients, or I run like a free WhatsApp group for dads to get kind of fitness advice. And the first thing I always tell people in there is that you need a bigger why, like a bigger reason that you're doing it. So mine was for my kids, and I obviously had that moment with the Buddha statue and all that kind of thing. For a lot of dads that I work with, it's a similar kind of thing. Maybe they haven't had like a specific moment, but they're doing it for their families and to be that kind of active parent. Um, it can be for yourself as well. Like it can be all sorts of different reasons, but you need something that's bigger than just, "Oh, I feel like I need to lose a few pounds." Generally speaking, you're going to rebound pretty quick from these kind of short-term fixes.
You touched on something that's really important, is that, like, the reason, right? I think the reason why also people get really motivated and then it fizzles out is that their reason is really like surface level. It's
Yeah,
maybe, I've got a vacation in the summer and I want to look good for my vacation, or
yeah,
you
for sure.
know, there's a wedding, or it's just New Year's and I this year I want to look good. I want to look good for the gram. But if you think about like the long-term thing, and I've thought about this a lot as somebody who's turning 40, my son's 3, in all likelihood I'll, if I have another one, I'll be over 40. I thought about the same thing, like, okay, in 20 years I'll be 60. This child will be only 20. That, and at 20 you're
Mm,
basically still a kid. Even though you're an adult, you're still basically a kid. So, and
yeah,
if they wait until as long as I did to have a kid, then I'm going to be like,
yeah,
oh,
that's the
90.
scary one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
then I'm going to be like,
that's the
then I'm
one that
not
you
going to really
definitely don't
know.
wanna do.
Yeah, then I'm not going to know any of my grandkids if I go on this trajectory of not being healthy and kind of making these poor choices. So that, when you think about it like that, now you're thinking something way beyond just surface level. Now you've really gotten into the deep, making meaningful changes and what's going to make a meaningful difference in your life. I've done the opposite, man. I was like a health freak and fitness fanatic when I was in my 20s, and I loved working out. I worked out, for over a decade, like 5 days a week, for well over a decade. Once I had my son, it dwindled. Like yesterday, I was able to work out. I did like 200 push-ups. I did some kettlebell workout, and then I went swimming because the time permitted me. But
Yeah,
I'm trying to just exactly like what you said, chip away, fit in what I can do. I'm not trying to, like, because I know exactly what you said. If I turn around and be like, I'm gonna do this 5 days a week, I'm gonna do, it's just not sustainable. You have to slowly change your lifestyle into that. Because you need the dedication. You need to have really the dedication, not motivation. You need to have the dedication. This is pretty much talking about how you made the change in your life, how you overcame being overweight and dropping down. Like, how were you able to make that change?
I think you definitely need like that kind of level of determination and a bit of motivation, a bit of willpower and things like that to start off with. But I think the longer it goes on, once you get past a certain point, then it just becomes like your new identity and you are that person now. Um, that's not to say that there isn't like a little bit of the old person left. Every now and then
Mm.
you have to have a bit of a word with yourself.
Yeah.
I was at a gas station, or a petrol station as we would call it, um, the other day, and the old me, every time I got petrol, I would go into the kind of kiosk to pay. Yeah, my as soon as I opened the door, as soon as I put my hand on the door handle to the petrol station, my brain went, "Oh, you could just get a like a sausage roll, like a snack, or you could just get a chocolate bar." And I was like, "Hang on a second, you don't want a chocolate? I've just eaten lunch. I don't need anything. I'm not even hungry." But there's
Yeah.
just that like that switch that goes that, and it's still there after 4.
Let's switch lanes a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of people want to know a little bit more about your hair transplants. And, well, one hair transplant. Okay. You're in shape now. You've lost the weight. You look like a different person. Um,
Yeah,
right here, 2024. What's making you say, you know what? I'm bald. I hopped on the medication. I'm getting a little bit back. Obviously, my hair looks a little bit better, but I want to do something about this surgically. Um,
yeah.
what what was that switch like? How did your family react to it?
I think, but like my wife was really supportive, and yeah, not that many people. Like I told my kind of close family, like my obviously my wife, my mum, and kind of some close friends and things like that. Um, it all goes back to that kind of older dad thing of just. So I got to the point where I didn't feel like an older dad anymore. Like I had loads of energy. Um, from that point of view, age wasn't even really kind of factoring into my day-to-day thinking. But then there's still the fact that you kind of look a bit older than you feel. And I think it comes down to just wanting to kind of align the physical appearance with how I felt at that point. Um, and I tend to make fairly quick decisions. I think I sort of decided this was something that I wanted to pursue, and did some research, kind of narrowed it down to a few people, um, had a few consultations, and then basically as soon as I had the consultation with Dr. Ted, I just thought, yeah, that's the guy. He just gave me complete like confidence that he could do it. Most of the other people I'd spoken to had kind of said, yeah, we can definitely cover the front, some of the mid scalp. Not sure whether we're going to get enough grafts to do anything really on the crown. And I just didn't really want that. I didn't want to have to do it in two procedures. I know, a lot of surgeons will kind of do the front and the mid scalp and do nothing at all in the crown. I've seen that quite a lot. And then you go back for obviously a second procedure to fill in the crown. But I didn't want to do it that way.
Yeah.
Um, I just wanted to get to like a decent result first time. And I think probably, you may correct me on this. I'm not an expert, but I think there's very few people in the UK who would have been able to do that with the amount of hair loss that I had.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, very few people in the world,
Mm,
and that's what I'll say. Very few people in the world.
yeah,
I mean, if you think about it from like a perspective of like strong men or like power lifters, you know what I mean? Like, How many
Yeah.
people can seriously say they can deadlift, 500 pounds or something, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not many, right? Like you anywhere you can go to a lot of gyms and there's probably not going to be maybe one if you're lucky, if it's a really good place.
Yeah.
So in terms of like that, like I like to think like Ted Milne he's putting up numbers,
Yeah.
he's definitely putting up some weight. So for sure, I think in the UK, I don't know anybody that's doing that many graphs on that level, on that massive
Uh,
scale, and I don't know that anybody wants to do that because it does take a different. Um, you have to you kind of have to model your practice differently. To do such a massive number of graphs, you have to have a big team. You have to be willing to stay late, and it's just also take a higher risk because now you're moving so many graphs in one session. You have to make sure you're doing things properly because let's say something goes wrong, you kill a lot of graphs. Now you've done 8,000 graphs. You've depleted a big portion of the donor supply, and if you got nothing to show for that, that's a big
yeah.
risk for a surgeon to take. Um,
Yeah.
so it's really you have to be kind of like risk prone. You have to be really motivated and kind of really want to do that. And Ted's up there for sure. He's doing incredible work. And he's maximizing these FUT and FUE combos, which is why I wanted to share the screen because if you
Yeah.
look at your donor, he is getting the absolute best graphs possible. Like he's using the donor supply beautifully. He got the best hair where the strip is at. That's the best premium quality hair. But he also was able to get some really good hair above that and some really good hair below that. And he obviously left the portion which you have like the finest hair, the thinnest hair, maybe some retrograde alopecia here, where you don't really want to get into that zone. This was actually, I think, a few months ago. Yeah, July. I think that's when you did the photo shoot. You kind of
Yeah.
see
That
your
might have been
crazy
6 or 7 months,
transformation. I
I
mean,
think.
again, to just to put it into perspective, just to get this lean, if you're someone who's not overweight, let's say you're just someone who's like maybe just what would you say, like maybe skinny fat or something, just to get to this level is very, 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 very difficult. To get from this to this is insanely hard. I mean, it's insanely hard. Oh, I
Mhm.
think I might have passed it over here.
Yeah. Maybe page 4.
Yeah, I think page 4. So this was June.
It's month
Your hair is
5.
actually, yeah, your hair looks actually a lot better now. Um,
Yeah, it's still thickening up too. So I'm only at
yeah,
month 8 now. So month 7 was decent. I think that was the most recent update
yeah,
on HRN.
yeah. So there you go. Big improvement. And obviously lighting plays a role, but I actually
Yeah, I
love
mean
that
that's a lot of
you're
those are
showing
direct sun. So
sun's blasting right there through your crown and it still looks really good. It looks, most importantly, it looks natural. Was somebody, which was another doctor, I won't say his name, meant I posted like a collage of that, of your photos on Instagram, and surprisingly there was a few doctors that were a little bit like, I don't want to say hating, but they were kind of like giving um sort of like the type of compliments you would give someone where you're trying to you build them up to take them down. It's like if I say
mhm.
like, "Oh man, you look great. Should really work out your legs though." Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Like they're
yeah, yeah,
saying something nice, but then saying something negative to kind of, I don't know what the would be the motivation for that, but they mention like your temples, right?
yeah,
Your temporal peaks, saying, you know, telltale sign of a hair transplant is that you don't do the temporal peaks. The temporal peaks should be done, and it's otherwise it doesn't look natural. So I'm gonna break that down because I think it is an important topic because people do ask, like, is it worth it for a Norwood 6 to get temporal temporal peaks. And this is the photo, right? So they're saying temporal peaks should come out to here and here to kind of match that uh, hairline design. Here's why I don't agree with that. You don't have to have temporal peaks if you have a conservative hairline. So if you look at your photo here when you're 21, you have barely any temporal peaks. I mean, they were already going. Your hairline height is already very high. It would look absurd if you had temporal peaks to come out to here, right? If you had really
Yeah,
aggressive
sure.
temporal peaks with a hairline that high, it's not going to match and it's not going to look natural. Here you see by the time you were 35, your temporal peaks were not no different than they are now. Even at 21, they were barely a little bit out, which if you get another hair transplant, that's what you should follow is that cuz
Yeah, I
that's
think
basic.
that's I have discussed it with, or Dr. Ted's discussed it with me, and we've had a bit of a chat about it. And yeah, it wasn't really something that I'd thought about, and for that reason, was because I looked back at the photos from, yeah, when I was 21, and like, I couldn't tell you whether I ever had any. I'm not sure that some
It
people just have like crazy
very
temporal points, don't they? And I don't
yeah,
think I've never had that kind of hairline. Um,
yeah.
but I think if we do go for a second one just to fill in the crown a little bit more, which is something that we have discussed, then maybe, yeah, like you say, just a
Just
little touch of
very,
shape.
very, very
Um,
slight. You don't look unnatural having them. What looks unnatural is, let's say you were to like have really lowered your hairline and done really aggressive temple peaks, which have been done a lot, and you had
yeah,
that crown just like a big gaping hole, just a huge space of just no hair.
yeah,
That
I
to
think
me
that's
is
what
the
I wanted
biggest
to
sign.
avoid. And I don't know how many grafts you would kind of lose putting in there, but I think at the time that we did that procedure, the goal was to get as much hair on top as possible. So if you had to take, I don't know, 100 less or however many it would take, that's 100 less that are in here. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, maybe when if we did go back and do a second kind of little touch up, then maybe it's something we think about at that point. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it definitely wasn't something that I kind of even discussed or pushed for in the first one because my focus was on not being bald anymore.
Yeah, and it's not unnatural. That's the biggest thing. It's
Mm,
not unnatural because
yeah,
your hairline is, it would be unnatural if your hairline was straight and low, because that's obviously not seen in nature. If you have a low and straight hairline, usually like someone like Zayn Malik, then your temple peaks are going to come out because it matches the symmetry. If you've started to recede and your hairline goes further back, the same thing happens to your temporal peaks. So it kind of goes in unison. Your
yeah,
hairline is a conservative one. It's not really low. So
mm,
it's not unnatural to have your temple points or temple peaks like that. Um,
yeah,
yeah, that's not unnatural. It's not a telltale sign of a hair transplant. Telltale sign of a hair transplant is front loading the front, having that really thick and dense, having the crown completely bald. That doesn't happen in nature. That's not, that doesn't, that
yeah.
that's obviously because you've had a hair transplant. I did want to ask you about like before I let you go, because I do think this is an important thing.
Mhm.
Ozempic and Monjaro. Like,
Yeah,
this is sort of, it's exploded. Everybody it has been using this to lose weight, and a lot of famous people like Lizzo, who was famous for like being happy being overweight. Now she's obviously not overweight anymore, thanks
yeah.
to this drug. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you think is good to incorporate, or you know?
So I'll give you the full story. So I tested it for like 6 months, Manjaro. Um, and to be fair, I did it at completely the wrong time. I had a kind of a weak moment. I was probably, how far in was I? I think I was about 2.5 years in, something like that. Um, and I just got kind of a bit frustrated with progress and lost patience. And actually, it was the same company that sold me the TRT and the hair medication, also do Manjaro. So they've definitely got the market cornered in that respect. Um,
Wow.
and I just thought, yeah, like let's just give it a try. Um, and I just didn't get on with it at all. And I wasn't the target market for it at that point. Let's be clear. I tried it for 6 months, and I couldn't eat enough. I couldn't get my protein in. I lost all my motivation for training. Um, it was effective because I didn't want to eat anything, so I did lose weight. I suspect I probably lost a bit of muscle in that time from losing the protein and losing the motivation to exercise. But I came off it after that, and I continued on, and then lost a further, I can't remember, like 15 plus kilos after I stopped taking it. Um, so I didn't need it, and I wasn't the target market for it, but I do know what it feels like to be on it. So I think the thing that you need to understand with it is, for 99% of people that take it, it will be effective. You may have some side effects, but when you stop taking it, your food cravings will come back. And the target market for all of these drugs is people for whom the negative outcomes from their health of being severely overweight outweigh any kind of negative side effects, or the fact that they're going to have to likely take this drug long term. It's not something that the majority of people will get to a certain weight, stop taking it, and maintain that weight. Especially if you haven't built habits alongside it, and the cravings generally will come back more strongly, um, and you generally will rebound in weight, like either very close to, at, or above the weight when you started. For some people, taking it long term is a better option than being morbidly obese, or like a really unhealthy weight, because you've got health complications, diabetes, high blood pressure, all these things. And you accept the fact that you need that medication, and you've got to treat it like, I don't know, like blood pressure medication or something like that. You don't get your blood pressure down and then stop taking the medication. Like, you keep taking the medication. Um, some people can do it. Some people can use the medication and keep the weight off. Um, but the majority are going to rebound. And also, it's worth saying that that's no different to losing large amounts of weight through diet and exercise. The majority of people still rebound, and the majority of people who go really low calorie are still going to lose muscle. That's not like unique to any of the weight loss drugs. Um, so what do I think about it? I think for the target population, for the people who actually need it, I think it's probably net positive. Um, if they're a more healthy weight, maybe they've got their diabetes under control, their general kind of health markers under control, and it's working for them, and the side effects aren't completely ruining their life, then, like, why not? If that's the only way that they can get to a healthy weight, then fine. Ideally, I'd probably like people to at least try a good program that fits with their life first. Um, I've said to a couple of people, I mentioned the free WhatsApp group earlier. I've got kind of 250 dads, and we do kind of open questions and things like that. And obviously, a few of them ask about Manjaro, and I just say, give it 6 months. Try and find a plan. Try and find a way of doing it that's sustainable for you. But yeah, I think for the people who need it, I think it's probably a good thing. I think a lot of people take it who probably don't need it.
Clients.
Yeah. So the main way that people can find out if they want to is Mike Denman Fitness on Instagram. Um, the kind of program itself is called the Fit Dad Project, and the idea is you get time efficient workouts. Everything is designed to fit in with busy dad life. The nutrition plans are all flexible, um, and it's the focus really is on changing habits at the same time as doing your workouts and hitting your nutrition. So I try and make it the whole package. Like, we try and look at sleep, we try and look at your general day-to-day habits, water intake, stress, all of those things, and we're trying to build long-term habits and long-term skills with your nutrition that are going to give you the longevity that you want as a dad, and especially as an older dad. I get a lot of kind of older dads coming to me, I guess, just because I am one myself. So a lot of that focus kind of turns to longevity and building sustainable routines, and just being kind of proud of the dad that you are and setting a good example. So that's the focus of the program. So anyone who's interested in that, Mike Denman Fitness on Instagram, you can message me on there, check out the content. And MikeDenmanFitness.com is the website if you want any more information on programs and things like that. That's it. All good. It's been great to talk to you.